By the time we get to the end of each of the Gospels, we have grown accustomed to the disciples making foolish statements. This pattern will continue until after the resurrection, which is its own lesson for another day. Today's reading from Matthew, as we follow Jesus from his home base in Galilee to his final days in Jerusalem, contains one of the most foolish scenes of all. Hello. I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, March 31st, 2023. The Gospels of Matthew and Mark both place this scene in the sequence of events shortly before Jesus makes the turn at Jericho to go up to Jerusalem. Curiously, Luke places it at the table during the Last Supper, but I'm not particularly worried about this difference in detail. What they all manage to capture is the thoroughly human character of the disciples. The scene in Matthew begins with Jesus pulling the disciples aside on the road for a private huddle on the way to let them know one more time what to expect when they actually reach Jerusalem. We read, "While Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside by themselves and said to them on the way, 'See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and on the third day he will be raised.'" Based on earlier scenes, we might expect a different reaction from the disciples. Earlier in the Gospels, when Jesus tells the disciples he must suffer and die, Peter protests, even rebuking Jesus, saying, "God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you," which is when Jesus famously says to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." And a little later on, when Jesus tells his disciples once again that he must suffer and die, we read that the disciples were distressed at the news. But this time is different. Who knows? Maybe they've had time to process this information. I don't want to do any armchair psychologizing because that's not particularly helpful, but something changes. Now, instead of grief and denial, naked ambition comes to the fore. We read, "Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, and kneeling before him she asked a favor of him. And he said to her, 'What do you want?' She said to him, 'Declare that these 2 sons of mine will sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom.' But Jesus answered, 'You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?' They said to him, 'We are able.' He said to them, 'You will indeed drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left, this is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father.'" Wow. That is almost all we can muster in response. Wow. Of all the possible responses to what Jesus has just told them, this is perhaps the most inappropriate response imaginable. The best one can say is that at least now they've come to accept what is about to happen. But it flies in the face of all that Jesus has taught throughout his ministry. Weren't they listening when he said, "The last will be first and the first will be last"? Didn't they understand him when he said, "Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven"? The reaction of the other 10 disciples is immediate and perfectly understandable. We read, "When the 10 heard it, they were angry with the 2 brothers." That's an understatement. But could they be angry because they've been beaten to the punch? Could it be that they all want the same thing? Jesus certainly uses this as a teaching moment to drive home what he has said to them over and over. We read once again, "But Jesus called them to him and said, 'You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you. But whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave.' just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. I guess what this all shows is that the disciples were just regular people, or as I often like to say, just regular schmoes. What they do is hold up a mirror to us and show us as we really are, not as we like to believe we are, but as we really are. For I strongly suspect that in the same situation, we would have reacted in very much the same way. It is way too easy to condemn the disciples' foolish behavior with a sense of superior spiritual maturity. But when we do that, we only reveal that we still think the way they did, concerned really to prove that we are better than others. And after all, isn't that the point of Jesus' admonition to them? To stop thinking in terms of rank? Tomorrow, Jesus meets two blind men on the road. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.